Hey there, Capricorn. Welcome to your reading for this is your bonus March reading for the March 3rd eclipse we're having in Virgo. You have this wizard card. It says, use your skills to aid others. You have this Medusa card. It says, jealousy leads to downfall. Because this is an eclipse, each row is going to represent something different than I normally do. So the first row is what you are, what's out of alignment at this time. Virgo eclipses try to get us to gain clarity on our path or whatever we're doing in life. And so if something is out of alignment, probably a good thing to understand. This eclipse, because it's your 9th house Capricorn, and even if you're not a 9th house Virgo Capricorn, doesn't matter. It's going to affect you all pretty much the same. I would say that this one is all about your path, for sure. 9th house can be like long distance travel, your belief system, higher education, things like that. I feel for you, Capricorn, that things really could be falling into place, especially for those of you that have had a long-term goal, wish, dream, something that you've been working on for a long time. Don't get nervous if your belief system, or if like some sort of belief changes at this time. Sometimes I think we can have a belief for a long time that we hold on to for whatever reason. And, it can be like we can start to feel ourselves like drifting away from a belief, but we still kind of like hold on to it. And, I think this eclipse could be like manifesting in that way. But again, it's probably a good thing. Again, your first row is going to represent what's out of alignment. You have the Page of Swords, the Hierophant, and the Six of Swords. Your first two cards here are all about learning. The Page of Swords is my card of being a detective, like really looking into new information or finding information that can be helpful for you. And so this isn't really something that's out of alignment, but it is a good time for learning for you with that eclipse in Virgo in your 9th house. So, anything you want to research or look into, or, anything that you want to learn more about would be very beneficial with that card. You have the Hierophant, again, pretty much the same thing. The Hierophant is a teacher. The Hierophant brings us blessings from what we learned. He is blessing these two people in front of him right here with his hand. So, again, I do feel a lot of you could be, receiving blessings. Again, like I said, just astrologically, I think this eclipse is great for you for connecting the dots, things falling into place, especially if things have been confusing or if you haven't been sure like what to put your energy into or what to be doing at this time. It could be a good time to look into all that. And so, I would do that. The other thing I would say with the Hierophant is he can definitely challenge beliefs. The Hierophant can be a card of thinking inside the box, or, kind of like only thinking things from one perspective. And sometimes I think with the Hierophant, we have to expand our perspective. We also had Neptune and Pisces for a very long period of time. Neptune and Pisces, just a collective energy-wise, is a direct challenge to traditional belief. Plain and simple. We all believe certain things from like childhood or just because, who knows why. And Neptune and Pisces is like a child that's like, why? Why do you believe this? Why do you believe that? The crazy thing about Neptune and Pisces is you don't even need to have an answer. Neptune and Pisces is just like, why? Why do you believe these things about your life? And now that Neptune is in Aries, you could be working on some of those beliefs, especially with this eclipse. Things that you always thought to be true, maybe you discovered that they're not true. This could be good for sure because, again, if you thought that there was some sort of limitation to like what you could accomplish or what you could be doing in life, now you could be realizing that either that limitation doesn't exist anymore, or maybe it never existed in the first place. And again, I think it's going to be a good time for you, Capricorn, for sure. Again, it's a much more free time for Capricorn, as we've talked about in the past, especially now that Pluto is really getting going in Aquarius and it's not in your sign anymore. I think that you're going to feel more free and more flexible. But it's kind of like, again, Pluto creates spiritual PTSD because it's like 20 years, in a sign. Pluto spends 30 years in Taurus, for example. So, it has, Pluto spends different amounts of time in different signs and, but mostly 20 years. And again, it was like 19 years in Capricorn or whatever. And that's a long time to be dealing with an energy. So, I think a lot of you are being asked to think outside the box with this card. You have the Six of Swords, definitely finding a new path. You know, the ninth house on a Chris's Crappy Astrology level can be all about your path and the path that you're on. I think this eclipse very obviously is about you having outgrown a path that you've been on for a long time, and you're just moving on to something new. So I don't, again, this first row is all about what's out of alignment. I don't really know that, I don't think this is saying anything has been out of alignment. Like, maybe it was, but, I feel it's more saying you're getting into alignment, which is kind of a better message anyway. It's like you're getting onto the right path and you're leaving things behind and moving on to calmer shores with that Six of Swords. So, again, off to a good start here, Capricorn. With the Page of Swords, you have the Star. Yes, like discovering a purpose. Really, the Star we don't really consider a purpose, but I do, because I said so, Capricorn. This is your North Star. It is like having that guiding light in your life, that one thing that you are working towards. We have the Hermit right next to the Star. The Hermit has the Star in his lantern that he's holding on to. So, it might be time for you to, kind of like shine your light brighter. This could also say that there are things inside of you that you've wanted to reveal, and, it could be time for you to reveal something as well. This could be anything. And again, we're not talking about like revealing something by talking about it. It's time to like reveal your path by working on it, right? By creating something in the world that you're going to work towards. And that's what I see you doing anyway. With the Hierophant, you have the Six of Cups. A lot of childlike energy in the month of March. I do feel like the energy is a little bit on the serious side. So I think cards like Six of Cups, Page of Wands, Page of Swords even, stuff like that is trying to get us to be more playful and not be too serious, because I think the seriousness can be a little bit of a distraction sometimes. Like if we put too much pressure on a goal, then we're going to care about it too much and we're going to push it away, right? So I think we have to be willing to experiment, especially because pretty much this entire month is Mercury retrograde as well. And so we have to be willing to like try things, experiment with things, play around with them, see what happens. And if we have more of that attitude, things will, be a lot better. With the Six of Swords, and sorry, I wanted to say this as well. You have two sixes. So I love two sixes because two sixes is confirmation for your path. Like I said, ninth house is your path in some ways. So I think you're on the right path. You have the High Priestess, very intuitive time as well. A lot of people have been getting cards of like taking extra time to listen to your intuition or doing something to tap into your intuition, which would probably be good for you. The High Priestess can also be about, like downloading information. And I that's kind of what I feel for March. I feel like it's more download energy off the High Priestess, which is different than what I normally get on the High Priestess. So I would be like listening to your dreams, your daydreams, the information that pops into your head, really important. Also, this eclipse is pretty good for love, by the way, as well. We're kind of like in a good love time. So, if you want love, the Hierophant and the High Priestess can be divine counterparts. I like them better than the Emperor and the Empress because it's like a more spiritual connection. Next, we are going to look at what no longer fits in your life. You have this exchange and gifts card. It says there's a dance of give and take. What you give, you will get back. You have the soul family. It says prepare to meet those who share a similar frequency level as you. I definitely feel that Capricorn has had many experiences over the past years where you have probably given a lot and gotten very little. I mean, I've said it to you a bunch of times in past readings. So I think this is what you have experienced for a long time. And you've probably learned a lot about boundaries, about how much work you should be doing. It's kind of funny that you end with the Ten of Wands here, right? Which is what I think happens to Capricorn a lot. Like, especially if you have a job, for example, where you have to work with groups of people, like a group, maybe you have a job with a lot of group projects and things like that. I think Capricorn can sometimes get themselves into situations where they end up doing all the work. And, I think the Ten of Wands is about like not doing that anymore. I feel this is also saying it, but this is like from two perspectives. Number one, like one perspective could be from releasing control, right? It's like if you're taking over projects just because you're being a control freak, then, it could be about like learning to trust people enough to let them do their work, right? The other perspective is, again, finding better people to work with. So, I kind of feel you're doing it from both sides. You have the Hermit, the Queen of Pentacles, and the Temperance card. Again, pretty much everyone has had the Hermit, and again, it is a Virgo eclipse, so, kind of makes sense for Virgo energy to show up in these readings. I do think it's time for you to kind of like step into the light, shine your light, whatever you want to call it here, Capricorn. The Hermit has been through a dark night of the soul, and he's standing at the top of this mountain. But I always say that I think his next steps should be to come down from the mountain. He has to, show the world what makes him special so that he can get credit for his work. And, again, a lot of your readings talk about you needing to get credit for your work. This is the time for Capricorn where I think things are coming out of the idea world into the real world, right? So I think Capricorn has had a lot of good ideas, but I also think Capricorn gets tripped up on things like competition, because in also the amount of work that you think you have to put into something. I think that's kind of what gets in the way sometimes, where you come up with a good idea and then you might be thinking like, oh, but this is going to take, 10 years for me to be successful. But that's probably not true. It's like, yeah, maybe it's taken other people 10 years, but you have to realize that you've gained a bunch of skills over the years that you can use. It's like sometimes I think people, it's like they don't give themselves credit for the work they've already done. So it's like I don't have any good examples for you, Capricorn. We'll just use YouTube because that's all I do all day. It's like I see a lot of YouTubers where it's like they could, where they think like, oh, this other person that does what I want to do, it took them 10 years to be successful. It's like, yeah, but if you've been learning all along, for the past many years, it's like you have a lot of experience that you have to apply. And I think the Hermit is talking about the experience that you should be applying to like new stuff. You have the Queen of Pentacles, which is you, Capricorn, showing up in a strong position. So whenever you show up as yourself, it puts you in a position of power and strength and allows you to get what you want from the reading. Also very good for resourcefulness and being resourceful, which I think is a good word for you. Again, instead of thinking, how can I work harder? I think you should be saying, how can I be more resourceful? And how can I get more for the work that I'm already doing, right? And I feel that little mindset shift. Again, remember, having an eclipse in the 9th house can change your beliefs, or, it kind of says you need to work on your beliefs. And so if you think, oh, I have to work hard to make money, or I have to work hard to, have this other thing in my life, it's like, maybe not. Maybe just simply changing your belief system about it, or changing how you see it, really could make things a lot easier. You have the Temperance card. Temperance is patience. I feel you have been very patient. Again, this eclipse for you, Capricorn, is all about things falling into place as well, kind of like connecting the dots from the past. So, again, a lot of you could be getting results for things that you have been working on, or things that you have been creating. With the Hermit, you have the Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune can be a change in your fortunes, but again, this is coming down from the mountain. So to change your fortunes, I think you have to come out of isolation. It's like you have to reveal something, or you have to, show something off that you've been working on, or that you want to work on, like it's time. With the Queen of Pentacles, you have the Page of Swords again. So we have the Page of Swords twice in this direction. This could be something, this could be the other thing that is getting in the way of you getting started, is like your emotional connection to something. Like I said, if you really, really care about like an opportunity or a goal or your path with the star, that can form kind of like an emotional connection to the goal or to what you're trying to accomplish. And it can kind of, get in the way a little bit. By the way, like I said, it is a good time for love for you, Capricorn. So if you've been spying on a person here, like I said, could be a divine counterpart. The having an eclipse like this in your 9th house, it could be something like long distance, or a person from another country, or, there could be some sort of difference like that. They might not be long distance. They might be where you are, but they might come from another place. So, definitely something to think about. With the Temperance card, you have the Ten of Pentacles. Yes, it's like this is what the universe is pushing Capricorn to do, is to build and leave a legacy. Again, I really think Capricorn can become more successful than ever. There are several things we've talked about in past readings that you could be doing. The first thing that pops into my head is maintenance. We talked about this in your last reading, I'm pretty sure. It's like Capricorn, it's like most astrologers would say, Capricorn is climbing the mountain. Capricorns, they go up, they go down, right? So many Capricorns have experienced this in life, where they become successful, they come down to another, like to a new set point, and then they go up again. Like a lot of Capricorns have stories where it's like they become successful in like work or business. They buy a BMW, for example, and they go up, and then they start going down. Their income starts coming down, and it's like not until they can't make the payment on their BMW that they go back up again. And so for Capricorn, I think one of the life hacks for Capricorn is maintenance mode, where it's like where you force yourself to not be bored going like this. That's the problem. Is I think Capricorn people, they get really excited about a project. They make a bunch of money. And then all of a sudden that new set point up here, it almost becomes boring. So then it's almost like they have to go down to get excited again by something new that brings them back up. And so the trick for Capricorn is to get to the boring point where you get bored and you just have to maintain something. And then you go sideways and then you go up again instead of going down. And we've talked about this before. The Ten of Pentacles is building, leaving a legacy. There is not really any down with the Ten of Pentacles. There might be moments where they aren't, making as much money or having as much success, but they have systems installed to like keep it level, right? This could be like working with other people, hiring people in a business. This could be about developing a routine, that you stick to, that no matter what keeps you at this level. It's also about, kind of evolution, finding those opportunities that get you going back up. And so I think a lot of you have learned a lot about that over the years. Next, we are going to look at, what is coming in to replace anything that you're getting rid of. You have this lizard card. It says the unexpected. You have this prickly pear. It says diversity on it. Yeah, it's like a diversity of opportunity or other, looking for ways to evolve the things that you work on, looking for ways to keep something exciting and entertaining and, all that other stuff as well, right? And so I think that finding some sort of routine to make that happen would be very good. I've told you all before, it's like, this channel this is the longest I've stuck to something, is this channel in my life, right? And so, I run a lot of experiments on this channel. That's what keeps me interested in doing it in the first place, right? And so it's like I have a routine. I have things that I do to keep it interesting. And, I would come up with something here, Capricorn. You have the Eight of Cups, the Four of Wands, and the King of Swords. The Eight of Cups, he is walking into the unexpected. He's choosing not to settle for less. These Eight Cups, they do provide him with something, but it's not enough to keep him interested, right? So he's choosing to walk away for kind of like the hopes of a brighter future. He doesn't know if he's going to find fulfillment or not. He just is choosing to walk away from something that isn't fulfilling him. And it's the only card in the tarot with an eclipse on it. So a lot of you could be choosing to walk away from something that just isn't providing you with the life you desire. You have the Four of Wands. Four of Wands can be marriage, of course. Again, love looks pretty good this month. I think love looks good for everyone. I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on with love in general. So sure, could be love. The Four of Wands is also like your commitment to something. I think the trick for you with the Four of Wands is like no finish line. I don't really worry about this with Capricorn too much, but I feel that, again, like picking something that you can work on, that you could work on forever, that doesn't mean you have to. It just means you could, right? That would probably be the most exciting thing for you. I think you need more excitement here in this reading. These people are celebrating, but sometimes I just feel with the Four of Wands that if we pick a finish line, this is where we stop, like before the celebration. If we choose an opportunity, a business, a goal, something personal that we work on, that we could work on forever, that becomes more integrated in our life, that becomes a part of who we are, that's where like the celebration comes from. And so I feel that on the Four of Wands. You have the King of Cups. Could be a person, for sure, coming in for you. Could be a water sign. Could be any sign coming in for you. I mean, you have Aquarius. You have Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Virgo, Taurus. I think I said that. Pisces, Capricorn, Sag. You have basically all 12 signs. So whatever, just find a good person. The King of Cups is sitting in the middle of the deep ocean, and he has very deep emotions. This eclipse is a little bit emotional. So the trick with the King of Cups is to not drown in your emotions, to make sure you are coming up for air. And, I would just make sure you're doing that. Here you go. With the Eight of Cups, you have the Four of Wands. So again, this is like the evolution of your journey here, Capricorn. I feel like you're picking a path that it has more like future growth potential. Again, there's more to it. You know, it's like there's no finish line, like I was saying, and I feel like that's what you're doing. With the Four of Wands, you have the Six of Swords. Hopes of a brighter future. I said it on the Eight of Wands. This woman and this child, they're moving on to calmer shores for the hopes of a brighter future. And so I think a lot of you are, you know, it's like everything's coming together. You know, like I said at the beginning, I feel things are falling into place for you based off of like what you've been trying to work towards. And I do feel a lot of you could be like, I don't know that you're like necessarily walking away from something. I think you're walking towards something is more, you know, I know that sounds like the same thing, but I don't think it is the same, because, you know, walking away from something would say you have to cut something out of your life. I don't think you have to cut anything out of your life. I think you're, you know, walking towards just a path that has more growth potential, you know, more upward mobility. You know, of course, it's going to be up to you. You are a Capricorn. I mean, the whole point of being a Capricorn is that, you know, you are continuing to grow. But, there, you know, there's more growth potential here. With the King of Cups, you have the Three of Cups. Yeah, more celebration energy as well. In this reading, Four Wands twice. Those people are celebrating on the other side of the Four Wands. The Three of Cups, these three ladies here are celebrating this harvest that's going on around them. But it's like a harvest that can continue. It's something that can be maintained over a long period of time, right? And I feel like that's what you're focusing on for sure. Next, we're going to look at your long-term outcome here. You have this Treasure Island card and this Deep Knowing card. Yeah, this Treasure Island card is like as above, so below, which is good. And the Deep Knowing card says you already know. You probably already know what you should be working towards at this time. You have the Ten of Wands, the Ace of Pentacles, and the Eight of Wands. Again, this is what I would avoid with, you know, for you, Capricorn, is like doing all the work. This doesn't mean you won't be working. It just means like, should you be doing everything? Probably not. It's almost impossible to do everything as a human. And so getting help, you know, releasing obligations that don't belong to you, doing things in a more efficient way. You know, it's kind of funny because I always say to Cancer, your opposite sign, that like, what if this guy had a truck on his farm? It's like, why is he carrying those 10 wands if he could just pop them into a truck and drive to his front door? It says like, there are trucks in your life. There are probably easier ways to do the things that cause burdens in your life. And, you know, I would choose the easy way. You have the Ace of Pentacles, so clearly could be a very big opportunity coming in for you. I think this is an opportunity that you already have in mind, and it's probably an opportunity that you are creating for yourself. It is a card of growth. We have this garden right here, you know, so I always say with the Ace of Pentacles, it's an opportunity we have to like water, feed, fertilize, get rid of the bugs, you know, all that other stuff. So this is something that you are probably going to be caring for a long time, whatever the opportunity is. You have the Eight of Wands. Eight of Wands, like charging forward towards success. Again, yes, I think it's a really good time for you, Capricorn, finally. And I feel you are, you know, maybe charging towards success or creating more success. Eight of Wands is like having a single focus. So we have to be focused on one thing. And the star says the same thing. You know, we have to point in one direction with the Eight of Wands. The star, we have to focus on that one thing that we want to accomplish. We have Saturn and Aries. Saturn and Aries is like one thing at a time. Can't make this up. With the Ten of Wands, you have the Judgment card. I said it at the beginning of the reading. I was getting purpose off of the star. Again, we don't necessarily consider the star a card of purpose, but it kind of is. Again, it's having a North Star, having one thing, one purpose, one guiding light. And I feel like the Judgment card is saying the same thing. You could be getting a lot of answers this month. You know, this is your higher self angel right here. So you could be getting answers as to like what your star is or what your star should be. With the Ace of Pentacles, you have the Strength card. Yeah, I think you've been very patient, Capricorn. I also think, again, I was saying something earlier about like time and how much time, like you have developed a lot of strength. You know, I see this a lot on YouTube where it's like, people will go out and learn everything they possibly can, which is like good, but it's bad if you think there's more to learn, you know? I feel this is saying like you've built up your muscles enough for what you're about to do, and it's time to take action. With the Eight of Wands, you have the Sun. Yes, amazing. Definitely very positive to have the Sun and the Star in a reading. So the Sun can be a light that's shining on you. It can also just be, makes the whole entire reading more positive. So, this can say there's a lot of positivity here. It can also say that you need to pay attention to your attention. You have this mice card. It says discord among family or friends. Yeah, all this energy in Aries, I would just, avoid arguments. As I've been saying, I would avoid, things that are getting in your way, all that other stuff. You have this handshake. It says a meeting with a stranger could be important. Yeah, I'm a big fan of you socializing this year. I'm pretty sure I said this to you in your yearly reading as well. And you have the Three of Cups. There's just like a lot of benefits for you, Capricorn, and getting more inputs. We're gonna have Uranus entering into Gemini in April, and Uranus and Gemini, I think it's like we need to like plug ourselves into things like information or learning from people, whatever. And I feel meeting new people is good. You have this caterpillar. It says things will not always be this way. A change is coming. Clearly, you have the Judgment card. These people are about to rise up and step out of their old life, and they're about to step into their new life. You have this Scissors card. It says disappointment in some affair. Yes, definitely Capricorn. I think Capricorn has to let go of past disappointments, things that didn't work out in the past, and you need to start thinking about new things. You have this October card in this Sunrise. It says new creative ideas, new ventures, a fresh start. That's basically the entire reading right there, Capricorn. So, between now and October, which makes sense because, eclipse energy can last for like 6 months. So, again, pretty much that's, October is a little less than 6 months away or whatever. And so, I think between now and then definitely could be a good time for a fresh start. This looks pretty good, Capricorn. I like it. So thank you for being here. Make sure to leave a comment, and definitely enjoy your month.